Welcome to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we converse with incredible people doing incredible things to learn what makes them incredible. Today we're joined by Steven Eayrs, an incredible entrepreneur whose career spans decades and industries, including retail, motorcycles, and hospitality. Steve's story is as diverse as it is inspiring, showcasing creativity, adaptability, and the deep understanding of what it takes to succeed in a business and life. In this episode, we explore why honesty and knowing yourself are vital for entrepreneurial success, how creativity, resilience, and relationships fuel business growth, lessons from transforming a motorcycle dealership into a community-driven brand, what it means to find your tribe and thrive, Steve's reflections on creating spaces where people feel truly at home, the value of putting community first, and his journey through tough business decisions will resonate with anyone passionate about building meaningful, incredible ventures. Without further ado, let's dive in with the remarkable Steven Eayrs. Welcome back to the Incredible Machine podcast, where we converse with incredible people, do incredible things, and try to work out just what makes them so incredible. I'm very excited for this episode, and just quickly, before I get ahead of myself, I'm John Oliff. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm joined by my co-host and creative director, visionary, Luke Holden. Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, awesome. So again, I'm very excited about this episode. I haven't seen this incredible machine for some time, so we've been catching up a fair bit right now, and then we decided we should probably press record right now and just get started. But if I can introduce Steve Eayrs. So I know Steve as an entrepreneur of note, and that's one of the reasons why he's been invited on. But specifically, I think it's because not only is he interesting, he's interested, and he always has been in our relationship. We met some time ago via EO, an Entrepreneurs Network, Entrepreneurs Organization, and we were in the same forum. And so he's very familiar with the format that we use in these podcasts, where we start with the lifeline, and I'll hand over to Steve quite soon on that. But I say serial entrepreneur, I think the diversity that Steve brings into the room and experience is going to be really something to get hold of, because from retail and to motorbikes to entertainment, and we've got a lovely marketing campaign to talk about, and we'll get to that next, but later on. But to do with the bikes in particular. But how we start these shows, Steve, just to hand over to you, is it's your origins. How did we get here? Why you like this?
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jono. How's it, Jono? Luke, nice to be here. It's an interesting thing, because I'm kind of sitting here wondering why I am here. And I think it's a lot like that with a lot of entrepreneurs. They run around and they do all these weird and wonderful things, and they actually very seldom reflect on why they do it. It's just the nature of who they are and their characteristics. And I think they get frustrated with the general world to some degree. So they try and change it in some way that it suits them a little bit better. And it's certainly been my story. I get involved in businesses, and then those businesses start to irritate me because of decisions that get made higher up the chain, or government do something, and there's a new gazetted item, and it interferes with the way that I want to run my business. So then you either sell that business, close that business, and or hand it over to management, and then you go off and you open something else, and you sort of, I think, are highly sort of related to ADHD, where you're sort of always looking for that little shiny thing in the room, and it's something that sparks you and keeps you interested. So I think it's very highly linked to boredom and frustration. I think it's what happens to you, and whenever there's too much repetition, then you want to change it up, and if somebody says no, then that kind of doesn't reflect with you at all, and you go off and you do something else. So I'm kind of sitting here wondering why I'm here, but I know why I'm here, because I've got all this diversity in business, and it's always been the challenge and the journey of getting a business to a certain point. And then there's a lot of people who take solace in the fact that they like to be able to control something completely, and they're happy to then take it over from you and hold on to it and sit on the nest and look after it. And then you can go off and do the high risk thing about starting something new. And then that's obviously what I enjoy doing. So I think from a sort of life sort of perspective, I moved around quite a lot when I was a kid. I was born in East London, and then spent 2 years in Port Elizabeth, and then was moved with my family to Joburg for 2.5, 3 years. And then we moved back to my dad's sort of home territory, which is the Transkei, and I spent my whole school career in Umtata at a school there, which was sort of administered under Cape Education Department because we fell into that province, although we were an independent country. But we had most of our teachers came from either UCT or Stellenbosch University. That's kind of where most of their origins were. And they were quite interested in coming to do work in the Transkei. And we had a pretty cool school, although I do specifically remember the best day of my school career was the last one. I pretty much hated every single day of school. And I don't know if it was anxiety-driven, fear-driven, boredom, frustration, but all of those things encapsulated my average day at school. I mean, I couldn't wait to leave the classroom and go and play sport or do something else. That was probably the upside of schooling, was being able to do, extracurricular stuff, which was pretty cool. But nowadays, I think sports in schools have become, they're starting to slowly morph into club sports, and kids are now surfing and doing mountain biking, that which generally aren't really school sports, but they held by a club or something. So my school career was something I needed to get over as fast as possible, and I got out of there and went and studied and thought that I would somehow, because of my brother's chosen career, I thought I was going to fit into some kind of building industry, which, if I look back now, I mean, I must have been absolutely crazy to think that would have actually worked for me. Although I like the whole idea of building and stuff, but it's just it moves way too slowly for me. I mean, it really is a long game, And I only did that for 2.5 years, and then I went into retail and got involved in a petrol station with my dad, who wanted to retire, and my plan was for him to help him out for the last year or two while he sold the business, and then I was going to go and travel and do the regular stuff that 21-year-olds do. And I enjoyed the whole retail service game so much in the petrol station that I made an offer and bought him out, and spent 5 years fixing that business up and making it really good, and then went on to opening supermarkets and more petrol stations and fast food outlets, and all sort of in the Umtata area. And the first time I moved from the Umtata area for business was to open a motorcycle dealership in East London, which was going to work far better than in Umtata because of, we were quite a small community. And that went really well until I decided I wanted to live in Cape Town for a couple of years. So I sold that business to a friend of mine, Simon, who's still got it. And he's successfully been running it for 20 years. And I moved to Cape Town in 2004. And I ended up spending about 9 years in Cape Town, and lived in Woodstock first, then moved to town, opened a bar restaurant in Cliff Street in Gardens, or Tamboerskloof, which was very successful, and we were fortunate to open right at the World Cup Soccer in 2010.
Let me pause you right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to this because there's been a number of times I've heard you say this, and that you didn't agree with, and it was we talked about this prior to the show. It's one of the traits of a successful entrepreneur is their level of disagreeability. What was the reason for you opening that bar?
The reason for opening Van Hunks, which with a friend of mine, was I kind of got a little bit frustrated, and although there's hundreds of bars and restaurants in Cape Town, I couldn't find my home. I would go to one and I'd have a beer, and there were things that I liked about it, but things I didn't like, and then I'd go and find another one and go, yes, I wish I had some of this in that bar, and eventually you piece it all together and you decide, well, there isn't a place like this, so you got to create it. So that was sort of the engine. I think my friend and business partner at the time was looking more for a career. I was looking to create something, and we fortunately gelled really well in that space, and we started the business, and it ran incredibly well. It's a great success, and it still is. It's still sort of iconic business or restaurant or bar in Cape Town, and people still talk about it. And when I mention that I was involved in it, people are always kind of gobsmacked, because I don't really. If you look at that place and you go there, I'm not really the profile. My business partner, Chris, was far more the profile for Van Hunks. But then he was also the managing partner. So he was there on a daily basis. And I sort of came in from a financial aspect, and then on the creative side, getting it up and running. And and I did that for about 5 years until I sold that, and then kind of moved, I left Cape Town and came to Ballito.
So the second trait that you've touched on there is creativity. So we talked about this briefly on the show, and I've said it maybe a few times already in these episodes, but successful entrepreneurs have specific traits. One of them is disagreeableness. So they have a level of, and you had that at your schooling. It sounds like that conformity.
That's been a long trait.
So
solid.
These bars are great, but they're not the one. They're not for me. They're not like there's something that irks you about them. And then the other trait is creativity. And it seems like you wanted to create a space, and it seems like a very successful space, but you knew how to create it, and you've done that across the businesses. Even said with the petrol port, like getting it up and back. That's a creative endeavor. The third trait that we touch on is conscientiousness. And I use this example, but if you go across the road where you are right now, or if you're listening in a coffee shop, there's probably people around you that are drawing beautiful pictures and solving the world's problems. And they know exactly how to do that in a diagram, but they're not conscientious. They don't go and get stuff done.
Yeah.
So, and then the last little extra or X factor trait is urgency. So opening a bar in Cape Town right now, and I need you to do it, and but you'll conform, and it'll be great. And we'll have the partnership. So that ties in really nicely to be an entrepreneur. I think we laughed about it because one of the funny things about disagreeableness is, on average, or entrepreneurs are above average in creativity and in disagreeableness. The most disagreeable people are in prison because they just disagree totally. Like taxes, what are those? Like, meh,
I'm not paying that.
Yeah. So you want to stay clear of that and pay your taxes, but this is a level of that, and you know how to turn the nodes on that. So okay, cool. So you moved back to Ballito, and it seemed I didn't know you'd done the motorbike before, but that's interesting because in Ballito, what's happening now?
Well, I moved up here because the dealership that I got involved in Durban, just as a sort of silent partner on the outside, got into serious trouble, and I chose. I'd never lived in KZN before. I've always had a inkling about it, and I've had family that have lived here. So I thought, hey, this is going to be a cool challenge and something new in a chapter and something exciting. Because I mean, we're around now for, unless it's some kind of dreaded disease gets you or a horrific accident, you're around for 80, 90 years. There's a lot of opportunity to get really bored. So if you can find a new chapter in a new place, and there's going to be something exciting to do there, and you get the feeling you're going to meet really cool people who are going to challenge you and are going to be interesting, then I'm up for it. Then that's where I want to go. One of the things that I've realized along the way, though, is successful entrepreneurs or just business owners generally have to be really honest people, not only so much with, it has to be there in your code of ethic and the way you do business, but you've got to be really honest with yourself, and you've got to be able to know when you're not good at something. So if I'm trying to create a space, and the space isn't really my kind of space, but I know it's going to work, I need to find somebody who can create that space. Because it's all very well being full of yourself and confident and courageous and going out there and creating a space, but it might just not work. And sometimes you've got to get expertise or a different culture involved. And that was probably the most difficult thing for me in Cape Town with opening Van Hunks was forcing myself to step back and allow my partner to do a lot of the creativity work. Although I knew what I wanted out of it from a look and feel and being a customer in the place, but I didn't really know how to put that all together. And he was really, really good at putting that stuff together. He just had an incredible touch for seeing something beautiful or seeing something not beautiful secondhand that was used and worn, and just knowing where to put it inside the restaurant and the bar to make it just gel, and it was an incredible sort of process to watch for me, and it was such a comfort to watch somebody so skilled doing something like that, where I knew the end product was going to be what I wanted, and I could watch somebody else piece it all together and just sort of be there as a support structure and make sure that what we were spending was going to work out in the end of the day, but having that artistic flair within the business. And I think since then I've done a couple on my own and they've been successful, but then I was going into a market that was way more suited to my personality, which makes it a lot easier and a lot safer to take those risks. So I ended up in Ballito looking after the motorcycle dealership, and I'd done that now for 7 years. And along the way, I got more into the restaurant bar thing again. And I really, if I go back now, I think the day I left school, I should have got on the boats, or I should have gone overseas, and I should have worked in bars and restaurants, because I absolutely love it. And it's not because of the food, and it's not because of the bar. It's because of the people. You come across the most interesting people, and I've always liked. There's a famous person, a famous group of people over the past who had this strategy where they always made a decision twice. They would have a problem, and they would come up with a solution, or they'd make a decision and they would write it down, and then they'd have the same conversation and make the same decision inebriated. And then they would align the two solutions and see if they came out. And it's fascinating to watch people walk into a place kind of sober and maybe a little anxious and a little bit worn out or happy or whatever, and just see the metamorphosis that happens during the course of the evening. People eat, they drink, they socialize. And I kind of find that I get to know my community really, really well by being in that environment. And it's a thrill for me, because I find Ballito so eclectic and so new. You've got old people who have lived there for 20, 30, 40 years, and they have grown up there. And then we've got brand new people from Joburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, all sorts of things living in Ballito. And there's this awesome mix of really cool cultures in Ballito. So it's been like absolutely incredible for me to get involved in this industry in Ballito. I don't think I've been happier in the 50 years I've been alive since the last 3 years or so doing what I do in Ballito. I think it's really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's just awesome to hear.
Yeah, it is, because, you go through a long period of your life finding niches and going into things that are kind of short-term gains, and you have great fun, and then you look for the next shiny thing. And now I'm creating shiny things with great people. I've got partners involved, and we really work well together. But it's so nice to see that shine doesn't fade. It keeps going, unless something horrible happens, like with the barrel. That got closed down, because people who didn't like us found out that we had some glitch in the paperwork in the planning department, and they scratched around long enough to find out that there was a problem, and then eventually got our liquor license suspended, until we can get this thing sorted out. So, that was quite I want to say it was traumatic, but it was kind of irritating, because we just felt like we were doing a good thing, and we just felt like people are going to be grumpy with a lot of things you do, but this wasn't a bad thing. It was a pretty cool thing, and it got a lot of following and a lot of love from the community, and just I think some people, they just didn't like it, they lived in close proximity, and it wasn't for them,
And haters are going to hate, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and it got a bit ugly every now and again, got a bit personal every now and again, especially a little bit on social media and that sort of thing. But I know the reasons why I did what I did, and I can confidently be online in any environment and defend what we were doing, because I felt so strongly about the benefits of what it was. People are quick to throw out something that's a restaurant or a bar because of the alcohol. They always want to make it look like it's something not so great and it's not good for the community and everything. But yet, people have walked through the streets their entire lives looking for that light that's on. And it's a place where they want to go, and they don't necessarily want to socialize with somebody, but they want to be in company. Like, maybe their home life isn't great. Maybe they live alone. Maybe they're genuinely lonely people, or they're away from their home and they're in a town that they don't know, and you walk down the road and you look for that lights on, and you go and you sit there and you have a beer or wine or a glass, something to eat, and you're just in an environment with other people. And that's what we are. We're humans, and we look for that kind of interaction. Even though we don't need to touch and talk and smell and feel, we want to be in an environment where there's a bit of an energy, and we feel alive in that, and you feel a sense of community and a sense of safety. And every time we create a place, that's the most important thing that we look for, is every person who walks through this threshold is a guest of ours, a personal guest. And whether we're going to personally serve them, or one of our staff are going to serve them, or they're going to sit there and do their thing, we need to look at that person and go, this is somebody that we've got to look after. That's who we are. It's hospitality, and that's the whole game. It's not just a business that makes money. You've got to have the right ethic from the start. The money comes later, and hopefully it comes later, but you can't start with that premise that I'm here to count cents and rands and work out gross profits and percentages. And we're not accountants, and if you run a restaurant like an accountant, or you're going to come horribly short. You've got to be a people person. And I think out of all the businesses that I've ever been involved with, that's been always my most important thing, is that the person that comes through there, I don't look at them as a customer. I look at them as a guest. Whether it's a supermarket or a petrol station or a restaurant or a motorcycle dealership. I mean, every person who walked over the threshold into our KTM dealership became a personal friend of ours. And, we would do everything we could to make what they do as a passionate motorcyclist just better and try and enhance their whole experience, because we feel so passionately about it. We want them to just have the best possible time they could ever, and if you're authentic about that and you're genuine about that, it just translates into your entire business, your staff, your customers, everything.
I think it makes it more easy to be consistent, and that because it's authentic.
Absolutely. Lying is terrible. It's so difficult. You've got such a good memory, and I've got a shocking memory. So it's better for me to just be honest and open all the time,
Well, I love that, and I can tell from what you've said, the consistency is always there. And we'll get to the KTM. I want to get on that KTM story because we've got that case study and we'll talk about that soon. But just to go a couple of steps back, one of the other things that I've noticed is that, and I love this that you said this because I like to try assimilate the same, is make sure that I'm not the smartest person in the room. And you can say, John, that's probably a low bar, like me. So it's like, and everyone's entitled to their opinions about that. But so if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And it sounds like but that it takes genius to recognize genius. So I would think too that's the case. So in order to get the right people,
not to be intimidated by it. I love being amongst people who are incredible and geniuses in what they do, because there's an element of safety in that factor as well. Who wants to be in the room with people who can't make moves and can't do things? You're on your own. And everybody's looking at you to make all the decisions. So I love it when I'm surrounded by people who've got great input, great passion, and a high level of performance. Because now you've got a team. We just have to look at our Springbok rugby team. I mean, Russie's there and he's doing what he does, and he does an incredible job. But what he's done is empowered every single guy on the field to do their job a lot the way that they like to do it. And he brings the best out in all of those people that are on the field. And if you don't do that, then you've just got players and you've got a coach, and there's a disconnect. And I think we as rugby watchers, South Africans, I feel that a little bit about the All Blacks at the moment. And they're such an incredible team, but they just don't seem like a team. They seem like they've got the players and they seem like they've got a manager and they've got all this heritage and everything, but there's just no ways it gels like our Springbok team does. And I think, player for player, they might even be better than us, but not as a team.
Not as a team, no. So like, there's one thing, and we've talked about this before, Luke. I think it's like the best I've ever worked or best I've ever felt is something you alluded to there, is when I'm wanted, not needed. You don't need me to survive. You just want me there. And that's great, because then that's a lot of pressure off. Like you'll be all right without me, but you just want me there. And each of those players, we've got so much back in your Springbok example. There's so many people on the bench that are number 2, number 1, number 3 in the world, debatable where they are ranked. The depth is just fantastic, and Russie's done an amazing job there, and they are absolute incredible machines. So.
And funnily enough, some of those people, when they came onto the bench and came into the team, weren't even in the top 5 in their position in the world. He's allowed them to
grow into that.
To grow, and suddenly we're looking at them and we're going, this guy's an incredible player, and he just wasn't ever that before. And some of them aren't youngsters either. I mean, we've got a couple of guys in the team, like KwaZulu Smith, for example. I mean, he was always a sevens player, and now he's in. He's one of the best loose forwards in the world in 15-man rugby. And, he got given a shot. Russie brought him into the team as an impact player, and now he's incredible. So, I think the genius there is allowing people to, motivating them and allowing them to be as good as you think they are, and I like what you say as well about when somebody wants your opinion or wants your help, it's a lot better than when they need it. You feel freer and more open to be able to authentically and honestly give what you can and the best that you can without the pressure of knowing that it's going to sink the whole endeavour if you get it wrong.
There's a lot less pressure in that. And I think exactly. So just to transfer onto or segue to that the KTM business, before we get into the case study that we want to talk about, and the links to that will be in the show notes, and we'll have that out there because it's a beautiful thing that's been done there. Do you want to take us through that experience and what's happening there, and give us an update?
Yeah, I can. My sort of affiliation to KTM started 26 years ago. I was always a Yamaha fan because I grew up in a small town where there was only a Yamaha dealer, and he was a friend of mine and a terrific guy, but he eventually moved overseas. And I went to Italy and I saw the sort of heritage and the culture that KTM had as a company and what they were trying to do. And it really aligned with me, and I thought that this is incredible what they're doing here. They're still a very small company in comparison to the big Japanese houses like Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Honda. They were still way off that. But in terms of the sport that we do, and in terms of how they was perceiving what the culture should be and what the customer really wants, aligned with what I felt should happen. And it's not like I had any influence over them, but I came straight back to South Africa and told my friend with the Yamaha shop that I'm going to open a KTM dealership. So we kind of did it at first. We kind of did it together, and then we realized that it wasn't going to work because we're going to compete with each other. So I moved it out of Umtata and moved it to East London, and then did it for 5 years, handed it over, and then came back into it again 8 years ago. And only to find that I think this is a bit of an ebb and flow system that happens with with successful companies where they start small and then they become gigantic. And I think generally what happens is that the creative minds and the people inside the company that make it great at the beginning eventually get into a situation where they need really powerful accounting type people to hold it all together because it's just exploding, which is terrific. I mean, that everybody wants that out of their business. But at some point, somehow, management gets to a point where in every single department, the number two is an accountant. So they'll have an engineering department with an engineering guy running it, and then there'll be this guy and that guy. And then when things sort of take a little bit of a wobble and there are a couple of problems, or somebody transfers, then they take the accounting person and they say, well, listen, you just step in for a little while and hold it together until we find the new engineer or the new creative or the new service guy or people guy. And when they get into that position and they make senior board level and shareholder people really happy because they control costs and they produce good figures and it's great. So everybody kind of gets happy with that, and then they end up staying in that position. And I don't ever think that's a great idea, because if you're the culture and what you've done to create your success, you minimize that for the sake of cost controlling and putting somebody in who's totally left-brained into those environments, the flame's going to go out. It has to eventually go out. And I think, unfortunately, that's kind of what happened with KTM. I mean, they're in a really bad place at the moment. I think their share price is about 25% of what it was a year ago. They're really in a bad spot. And I don't know if it's coincidence or it's irony or whatever it is, but I always find that when I become disagreeable with principles in big corporates, it's weird to say it, but they're almost ready, they're about to take a fall. It's like as soon as their culture changes, because I buy into a culture, and then when that culture changes, I don't go with the flow. I become disagreeable and I become annoyed and I start fighting with them, and then the relationship goes badly. And it's not because my fight or disagreeability with the company affects the bigger plan. It's like there's something happening in there that is filtering down and making it very uncomfortable for me. So it's like, I know they had that story when the tsunami went off near Thailand 20 years ago, I think it is now. And there was a place in Sri Lanka where there was a reserve right down on the coast where there were a couple of elephants that had stayed in this reserve for, I don't know how, very, very long time. And this reserve was there basically like an elephant reserve type of thing. And at some point, all the elephants suddenly just went up the mountain to a place where they never go. They're always down in the coastal belt. They started moving inland, and all the inhabitants got together, the staff of this little reserve got together and followed these elephants to go and herd them back. And that's when the tsunami hit. So these elephants just picked up something they were uncomfortable with, and they started, sort of getting agitated, and then they moved up the mountain. So they knew something was happening. And how they knew what to do, however it was. I heard the story when I was in Turkey 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine who's been to Sri Lanka a few times told me the story. And they knew something was coming, if whether it was an air pressure thing or there was energy or whatever it was, they kind of knew. And I feel that's what happens with me. I get disagreeable and agitated in a place, and it's not the actual what's happening in front of me. There's something bigger going on.
There's a disturbance in the force or disruption.
Yeah, there's a disruption in the force. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just get that feeling, and then I know something's
that's off.
Yeah,
because you brought it in. So it sounds, and I think that might be because you know yourself so well.
Yeah, I think so. I'm always honest with myself, and I'm just not agreeable. So I don't just go with the flow. People make decisions that don't gel with me, then I always challenge those decisions, which upsets a lot of people. But I feel like I have to do that, you know. So I do, and it often doesn't go well, as you know. So, yeah, we're sitting in a situation now where our shop dealer agreement was terminated 3 months ago. So we've now out of we're not KTM dealers anymore. We were until Wednesday last week, the 15th. And now we are Ride Motorsport. So we're now our own brand. So we're going to focus instead of all our energy going into promoting a brand, we're promoting ourselves as my partner and I have got 65 years of off-road motorcycle experience. Him on the technical side, me on the riding and the people side, and it's mostly been with KTM, but it doesn't have to be. So we've gone out there to look for brands that want to partner with us and adopt the culture that we have, rather than us adopting a culture that somebody else has that they can change. We're going to allow ourselves to change as we metamorphosize and change with our customer base. So I put something on social media the other day about, we're not here. We're here to look after the machines that our customers ride so that they can have a great time. And we're not in the brand business. We're in the people business. So we are really about the rider and the passion and the experience that goes along with it. And we'll find brands that align with us. And we've been successful with that. We're going to be launching a couple of brands now over the next couple of weeks, and we like what they say. When we talk to them, we see a transparency and honesty, a motivation, a passion, and that's what grabs us. So we're quite excited.
It sounds amazing. It sounds very consistent with the Van Hunks.
Yes.
Both are. It's like we're going to do it, and so it almost sounds like that it's a way better move in terms of in alignment with that and how successful that was. So the piece that we talk about, been alluding to, and again is going to be in the show notes, is a video that was prepped by the community that you've created, you and your
customer
partner,
base,
the customer base, motivating for that brand to reconsider and to take you guys on because of the effort that you guys put in and how you've been part of their life. And I picked up a few things like that you've just mentioned here. So echoed as community, and it's that people in front of the profits and in front of the brand. But that's how you build it. Luke, I don't know if you got anything else from that video that.
So I think just what you said now, Brew. Funny. I was actually talking to someone about it this morning because he was very proud that he's built this little. He's built trusted relationships and he services these people. And we were talking about how important relationships are. And it's exactly that. You look at your story and you listen to what you're talking about and the businesses that you've built and you've been mainly enthused about. It's all around people and relationships. And even on the case study video, it's like those were your people and they came because of the invested interest you have in them as people, not just as products. And I think,
and spontaneously,
people,
and spontaneously created this piece of work like that just captures again what you've said here. But what's interesting is, I don't no discredit to the people in general, but I don't think they're as sharp as you are, and not blowing smoke. But specifically because you know yourself, know thyself is like one of the commands. So, and because you know that intelligence, we just unpacked a whole bunch of things. These people have done it spontaneously and been able to be explicit about the stuff that we've just unpacked right now too in the video. So what we would talk about as marketing principles behind that video, it fits. It wasn't even done by the brand or by your business. It was done by the community. So it's user-generated content. They've gone out and the users have generated that out the box, like just done it for you, which is amazing. If you can leverage that, that's just great. And yeah, it'd be interesting to hear about the feedback that you've had from that video. But just before we get to that, the next one of the other principles we talk about is experiences replace messages. Mm-hmm. So the messages are all there in the words being explicit, but you can see these guys on site on the bikes talking about the roof of Africa, to talk about these things that you can get into that are experiences and trying to translate them into words, and they're doing a great job in that video. And I think that I don't know if you have any thoughts on that video and what it meant to you.
It was such a shock to Wayne and myself and Baron, who run the shop, about how our customers feel, because we know how we do business and what we do. We never realized to the full extent of how people appreciated what we do. Because we do what we do, and we go to work and we do it, and guys come in and they buy things, or they don't, or they service bikes with us, and they do what they do, and they go out and they ride, and guys break down and they phone us, and we go fetch them in a bakkie on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is, because that's just who we are. And when this thing went down and these guys rallied together and got the ride to happen and videoed it and made the video clip and all that, it came as a huge shock to us. We were just, are we doing things so differently that people feel this way? And I think, we can rationalize it because we're on the inside and we're thinking about why things happen and how they happen. But for these customers of ours, it's like I think they've been through the mill of substandard service and culture within a passionate hobby or pastime or sport. And we actually refer to ourselves quite a bit as a sports shop, because a lot of our customers are actually high-performing athletes, and they do incredible things, and they train really hard, and we're there to support them. So we do feel like a bit like a sports shop. But I think it's like they found a home with us, where they found, like, when they came through the door, there was just a bunch of people that they could talk to, be serviced by. We've all got different personalities, but we're all aligned in the same way. And they were just hugely frustrated that this was going to be taken away from them. I think it was just anger. And it was, and a lot of them are entrepreneurs, a lot of them are business owners, and I think they were just really angry that a corporate could make a decision without regarding them, where they're the ones who actually pay the salaries. It's almost a political revolt in a way. It's like, you can't do this to us. You're not going to take this away from us, and that's how they reacted. And I feel the same. I feel the same way, obviously, and I now see that in all my customers, and I see them so differently now. I mean, I always had a feeling about them, but I never knew how they felt about us. Oh. And now suddenly when a guy walks through the door, I see reciprocation. I see something that we've put so much effort into over the last 7 or 8 years, and we can actually see in our customers how much they've appreciated it. And I don't think they really appreciated it as much as they thought they did until this happened. And I think it triggered them. Mm. You go to a good restaurant and you have a good meal and you enjoy it, and then you go back and you have another good meal, and then suddenly that restaurant closes and you're like, what? No, that's and it's not because of the food and not because of the transaction. It's like the feeling you got when you were in that restaurant. When you first went there and you had your first meal, it was the food that you noticed, and then you go there regularly because the food's good. The product is good, and then you start to slowly, the culture and the love of the place starts to get into you, and eventually you're going there and you're not even really that worried about what you're eating. It's just like the atmosphere, and I think that possibly happened with a lot of our motorcycling clientele. They just liked coming to the shop, they liked dealing with us, and the love and effort we put in, they started to feel it, and now they realize they can still get the product, but it's just not going to be in the same environment, and that's what's made them so angry. So it's quite a weird thing, and one of the things that really aggravates me is when somebody comes into a restaurant or a bar and you serve them a beer, and they get that beer and they take that first sip and it's kind of warm. Like maybe the fridge was restocked later in the morning and the guys walked in at 12:30 and the fridge was stocked at 11 o'clock, and the barman took the beer out and gave it to him, and then he has that first sip and he's not happy with it because it's warm. So we don't mind. I mean, you give the beer back and we give you a cold one immediately. But there's a 15, 20, 30-minute period, maybe an hour, depends on who you are, when you're driving along and there's this anticipation, this you're going to get that first cold beer on a Saturday afternoon, and it's hot and the rugby's going to start. So there's this expectation, and you've just taken away that little thing, that person. It's not about the beer. It's not about it being warm. It's that first feeling of having that first sip or biting that first bite into a burger. You don't like what your burger is, and sure, anyone can replace it, but don't take away that feeling of that first experience, that first bite, that first sip. That's so cool, yeah. So, for us, serving somebody a warm beer or a cold burger is just like shocking. And it's not because of the money, and it's not because of the product. It's because of the feeling that person is not going to have that great experience they've been looking forward to.
Yeah.
It's kind of maybe because I hold those quality so high for myself. I really look forward to things. I get really excited about stuff, and I go in there and somebody gives me a warm beer. I'm like, well, fuck's sake, you've just ruined my day. And people can't understand why you're irritated, because it's just a beer. I'll give you another one. But I was so looking forward to that. You kind of ruined that a little bit. You can't reverse that. It's impossible. So I think it was my partner at Hunks once said to me, there's only 3 things in a restaurant. It's good lighting, good music, cold beer. And they're not that difficult, but you've got to be consistent with them, And yeah, I've held that close for quite a while, and it's worked really well. And it goes across a range of different businesses. It doesn't have to be a restaurant that has those 3 things. If you take any one of your businesses, just think about it. Just think about a supermarket. Is your air conditioning okay? Are people comfortable being in your space? You've got the same products as everybody else, but what's the vibe? What's the feeling inside your shop that makes you feel welcome, and makes you feel at home and comfortable? I was in Johannesburg the other day visiting a whole bunch of businesses, and I had to go and see a friend of mine who I'm going into business with, and he's got a big business in Johannesburg and probably almost 1,000 employees. And I walked through his warehousing and his offices and everything, and every single person who came past me in the opposite direction, of which there were probably more than 100 on that 2 hours that I was there, every single one of them made eye contact with me and wanted to greet me. If they could just see that I was reciprocal, or I wasn't in a conversation, or I wasn't distracted or something, they genuinely wanted to greet me. Nobody had taken a stick and said to them, you will greet every person you see. That definitely wasn't happening there. And these people's culture in that business was to greet, and from the cleaning lady to the receptionist who made beautiful eye contact and was engaging, right through to department heads, they genuinely wanted to greet you. It was amazing for me, and that is a logistics company. It's not a service-driven environment. It's not a restaurant or something. Like if somebody can get that right with 1,000 employees in a warehouse, that's just next level for me. That's just incredible. Yeah.
So how do you think he's done that? Is that a lead by example?
Because who he is.
Lead by example.
100%. That is exactly who he is. He is a very malleable, flowy, engaging, emotionally intelligent human who's got great social skills, and he's not me. He's not gregarious, and he's not out there. He's calm, collected, very calculated. But this is who he is and how he engages people, and he wants his staff to be the same. But he hasn't told them to do it. He's taught them how to be that, and as a result, every person in there looked incredibly happy. Within themselves, not all gushy and smiley and, I need to be friendly to you. No, they just genuinely looked like they were also enjoying their life within this company. Quite fascinating.
Incredible. The one, before we get to your quote that you've chosen, I just want to, you mentioned, I heard it come up a few times too, the word support. So, and I think that's what you do with your community. You support them, and we'll have this in marketing. It's brand as a butler. So brand as a service, and that's how you become a support system, or you become authentically helpful for the consumer, that partner. But what have you done? We talked about Roof of Africa. Like, what is that? How does that translate from doing it, you've done it, to now being a support system? What does that mean to you?
So when I did the Roof of Africa, it was 2003 to 2006, I think it was, and we were always on a shoestring budget, and only once, we would have somebody kind of giving us a bit of backup support, and it was great to have that, but it was relatively unprofessional. It was just someone driving the car for us, and bringing the cooler box to the next stop where I could dig around and find something to eat. And so what we do now is Wayne and myself go to the Roof of Africa. In fact, we're going now at the end of November, and it'll be Wayne's 32nd time. So 32 years, almost in a row, he's been there supporting riders, and anything from 10 to 15 right up to last year where we had 40. And we had 40 guys out there riding in the mountains. We sitting in what they call a designated service point, a DSP. We got 2 vehicles. Wayne stays with the vehicle and stays with the pits to repair bikes. I go out and fetch a guy if I need to. And we sit there, and we've got the live tracking on, and we're watching where our riders are, and we're anticipating when they're going to come in. And generally, their families are all in under the gazebos with us as well, waiting, with us, waiting for their riders to come in. And people are handing out apples and bananas and refueling and wiping goggles, and we sort of there to give information because people want to ask. They want to ask questions like, how long do you think it'll take them to get here? Because they're 10 Ks away, and you're trying to back them up, and then they get word that one of the bikes has got a problem and it's coming in. We had one of our riders arrive about 15 minutes before the cutoff on the Saturday afternoon when the event finishes like 2 hours later, and if he doesn't go out, he's going to get time barred, and they pull him out of the race. So he's now raced for 2 days solid, or sort of 8-9 hours a day, and he could not. And we had to change his radiator, and it took us 12 minutes to change his radiator for him, get him back on the bike, and get him out of there. And as a result, he finished the event, which he had trained really hard for, spent a lot of money preparing himself, preparing his bike. And there's just no ways. It's a not negotiable for us. We want every single guy. I kind of look after the people, and Wayne looks after the bikes, and we kind of team like that. So often he's working on the bike, and I'm talking to the guy, trying to keep him focused and trying to keep him motivated and psyched up, and try and talk guys out from off the ledge if they want to pull out and try and motivate them a little bit. I mean, you can tell when a guy's really finished and whether there's still a little bit of fire in there, and you can make him go that extra mile. So we sort of work well as a team, and we work well with the families and keep them motivated, and it's really cool to see how everyone sort of gels together. And we're just trying to create something where these guys do incredible things. It's an extreme event, and it's long and it's grueling, and the guys are high performance athletes, and the disappointment when they don't finish is just incredible. So we just try and minimize that to the highest degree that we possibly can. It's all kind of about them, really. We just like the dog's bodies, and we just get chased around, and we run around, and we fix bikes until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then sleep for 3.5, 4 hours, get up and head back out into the mountains again to get ready for the start and go through it. I mean, it's 3 days of hell. But I think it's harder for the riders. I mean, they are really at the coalface. So, we do it because we know what they're going through, and we've been through it. So, just want to try and make it as good as we possibly can for them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That understanding the experience so that you can improve it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
It's great.
Anything, we're going to transition to the quote now. Luke, you good?
I mean, we've got lots to talk about, but let's move on.
Okay, cool. I feel like I'm hogging it a bit with Steve here, but cool. So your quote, and I love Kipling, and at some stage we'll talk about the poem If, but this quote is, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. To be your own man is a hard business. If you try it, you'll be alone. You'll be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. I think you've epitomized that in this conversation. Yeah. I think but is there anything else like that? What does that mean to you, like more than what you've said, if at all?
I think being yourself and doesn't mean you got to do extraordinary things, and doesn't mean you have to do great things. You need to be happy with what you are doing in the moment. And there's a lot of this thing where people talk about, you must follow your passion and your dreams and all that sort of thing. But we live in a real world, and you've got to be realistic about that. I mean, I could just sit in a pub and drink beer all day, and that would be just fantastic. But that's not going to pay the bills, and that's not going to, in South Africa, we pay for a lot of things, and you've got to have a reasonable income, and you've got to be reasonably responsible about what you do. But I think the most important thing is that if you're going to go for something that is you're passionate about, you need to surround yourself with people who appreciate what you're doing and genuinely want you to succeed. And after you've failed once or twice, you pick up who the ones who don't really want you to succeed and the ones who really do. And if you can find the right people and the right tribe to be in, it makes it so much easier. But I've spent a lot of time in the wrong tribes. where people find you doing something can be a little scary for them. They're a little intimidated and frightened by something happening out of the box. It sort of shakes their world a little bit. They don't like it too much. And you can't get hung up on that. You just need to either carry on doing it and push through and be alone, or find yourself in an environment where people embrace those sort of changes. And it's one of the things that people don't understand about Cape Town, in that having lived there for 9 years and still having businesses there and going there on a regular basis, it's a free mind hub for people to really express themselves and to do things differently. And I think it's a vital cog, as Joburg is the economic hub of the country and Durban is like the port and the sort of tourism, and we've got the beauty. Cape Town is an expression place where people can go and try new things without being judged. And I think that's really important for our whole country, really, to have that outlet. It's interesting since I moved to KZN 7 years ago, and I've picked up something really interesting about Natal, and the people that live here. We've been through some pretty rough times this last couple of years with the riots and the floods and all this sort of thing, and I've just figured out, like, Natalians are of the most resilient humans that we've got in South Africa. They really are an incredible tribe, black and white. I mean, if I look at the Zulu, we know what they stand for, and if you look at the Natal farmer and what they've been through, and it amazes me. And if you look in the history of Natal, with all the wars, the Battle of Blood River, the Boer Wars, the Zulu Wars, KZN people generally need things to fight with. I mean, they've got the comrades, they've got the doozy, they've got the Sani to see. It's like they're constantly looking for a way to punish themselves or to challenge themselves. And it's the one province that stands out amongst all the others. So having lived in all the provinces and had quite a bit of experience in dealing with all of them and how they operate, KZN for me has been an incredibly tough nut. But along with, the toughest and the most resilient people have got the biggest hearts. They genuinely the most giving, and the most open and honest as well. Like people in KZN get irritated with things, but they don't run away from it and be scared about it. They challenge it, and they'll stand up to it, and they'll ask why. And for me, it's been an absolute joy. I got here; it was tough, but I knew that difficulty in being here was going to result in a great success. And I kind of feel like I've found my tribe. It's really cool people.
Sure. Well, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's us.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to have you in this province and on the show. And I don't know if there's anything else you would like to close. Any shout out or anything you want to do before we close this? Because I think we.
Yeah, just to all the business partners that I have and I've had over the years, every single one of them has been taught me an enormous amount about how to do things, a lot about them, which has been great, and a lot about myself. Your business partners are your echo, your sounding board for things that you do. Even if they don't want to challenge you, you can see it in their demeanor that they don't agree with what you're doing, and you've got to be sensitive to that. So over the 30 years that I've been in business, it's been awesome. The people that Renelle and I've been partners since 1997. I think it was just before 98, and we still are. She's still the sort of backbone of our financial. She's our financial director and a shareholder, and she looks after all the numbers. And then it goes right through to Wayne, who's my partner here at Ride Motorsport, who's like a technical genius and a fantastic people person. And I just learned so much from all the partners that I've got from Cape Town up to Ballito. It's just been an absolute, almost as much fun working with them than it has the actual projects themselves. So, choose your partners really carefully, and keep your feet on the pegs and reach for the bars.
Nice.
Motorbike bars and bars.
Love it. Been incredible, Steve. Thanks for joining us, man.
It's really been great, man. Thanks very much for having me. Yeah.